All right, Alexander, we have got to talk about Denmark and the revelations that Denmark was helping the US NSA spy not only on Danish industry, but spying on EU leaders. Angela Merkel, for example. This story actually goes way back to the Obama years. I remember that very interesting, fascinating revelation that Obama was taking a word out of Trump's dictionary was wiretapping Angela Merkel's phone, as Trump would put it. But, once again, Trump is right about all the wiretapping, because back then Obama was, quote unquote, wiretapping and spying on Angela Merkel. But now we have the revelations that basically the NSA, with the help of Denmark, was spying on everybody in Europe. Everybody in Europe. It's quite an incredible story. Europe says they're going to do something. France has come out with a statement, Alexander. They said these revelations of U.S. espionage are extremely serious and may have consequences. What do you make of this story?
Well, I think that there's three levels. Firstly, you're absolutely right. It does all go back to Obama. All roads always on this lead back to Obama. Let's be absolutely clear about this. Yes, the US has had intelligence operations going on in Europe up and down, no doubt for a long time. But it's always cooperated in the past with the intelligence agencies of its allies. What has happened this time is that it doesn't trust some of its allies, or at least under Obama's time, they decided they didn't trust some allies. They trusted some allies more than others. They picked and chose, and they found the Danes who were willing to carry water for them, as, by the way, in a different kind of way, were the British. But it all dates from that time. Obama was obsessed with this sort of thing. Remember how he used to, read every morning all the drone lists and decide, who would die and who would live and that kind of stuff. He is somebody who is absolutely fixated with secrecy, spy stuff, all that sort of thing. I say that, it's a fact. I mean, people can dispute it, but it's a well-known fact. It's very much a feature of his personality. And he gave this huge green light to the intelligence agencies to do what they had to do, and they've grown to enormous dimensions, and they're doing all this stuff all over the place. The second thing is to say about this is the Danes. And what this illustrates to me is the way in which, within this happy family of the EU, they all actually hate each other. Because that's the real story about this. The Danes don't like the Germans. That's a long-standing thing. It goes all the way back to the early 19th century. So, of course, they are happy to work with the Americans to spy on the Germans. Of course, along the way, they also spy on other people. They spy on the French, and they spy on the Swedes also. I'm pretty sure, by the way, that the Swedes, who've also got all kinds of things, they've also been spying on all sorts of people. And the British also spy. I mean, this is what we've had, this big court case, the GCHQ court case, which is barely reported here in Britain, by the way, in which we learned that GCHQ, the British equivalent of the NSA, was carrying out bulk surveillance within the European Union, in Europe, in Britain itself, working closely with the NSA. And of course, it was also working closely with the NSA over Russiagate. It was also feeding information back to the United States, which was used during the Russiagate affair. So, in this happy family, the European Union, they all really detest each other. The Danes dislike the Germans, the Swedes dislike the Germans, the French are suspicious of everybody. We all spy on the French. The British are playing their own game with the Americans. It's all carried out under the surface, but in reality, they all meet, they all have these wonderful group pictures, they all pretend that they're the best of friends, they all are globalists together, because that's also what they are, but in reality, deep down, there's all these seething tensions and dislikes and things of that kind. And if you really believe that the Danish government Danish politicians didn't know what was going on, that, you know, this was all rogue intelligence agencies in Denmark doing all that all by themselves, and that the Danish government wasn't informed and didn't know about it. Well, I have a bridge to sell you, because Edward Snowden was tipping off everybody about all kinds of things way back in the, you know, after he became a whistleblower in 2013. And we know that the Danish government had a pretty shrewd idea of what was going on way back in 2015, and they weren't telling anybody, and didn't tell anybody until last year, it seems, and then only in a very muddled way. And the Germans claimed that they only found out about it from the newspapers. So there you go. The Danes were up to it, up to the necks in it. The British even more so. The Germans, no doubt, playing their own sort of games, the French too, and none of them, they're all going to complain. They're all going to say, this is terrible, this is shocking, this must cease now. None of them are going to do anything. They knew way back in 2013, after Edward Snowden released all his information about the kind of things that were going on, and the Germans and the French found out that the NSA was, you know, or the British, whoever, were tapping into their mobile phones, and they complained and they said all sorts of things about it, but in the end they did absolutely nothing, and we have every indication that it still goes on. And I would remind you that a few days ago, there was that European Council meeting at which Charles Michel, the so-called president of Disunited Europe, the fictitious organisation that calls itself the EU, told everybody, please leave your mobile phones and electronic devices outside the room, because we don't want anybody eavesdropping. So they loathe each other, they mistrust each other, they all pretend that they're friends, they're not really friends at all, and at the same time, none of them is going to do anything about it.
So I've got one interesting comment that I want to make, but first, I think I've got a very important question to ask you. When will the European Union place more sanctions on Russia for all of this spying?
Oh, well, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. Believe it or not, I mean, this is the other thing. Because that council meeting that was, they kept all their phones outside. That was intended, believe it or not, to discuss Russia. That's the other thing. So there's going to be another meeting in July, and the Russians are briefing everybody that they think there's a real possibility that they'll be disconnected from SWIFT. That summit meeting, and you know, they're taking all the necessary steps to prepare for that. So, you know, they will very quickly, no doubt, be sanctioned, because of course all this spying ultimately is their fault, even though they had nothing to do with it. But you know, all spying, all the surveillance that goes on, all the hacking is entirely Russian. Russians are the only people who meddle. Russians are the only people who hack phones and listen into people's private conversations, and they must be sanctioned. Yeah, and you know, if it turns out from time to time, well, there's some involvement by the Danes and the British and others, well, that's all, you know, part of the family. So, you know, we look the other way. We'll pretend to.
All right, so I'll get to Denmark in a minute, because I think there's an important story there about Denmark. But my observation is this, and I'd like your thoughts. Doesn't God have an incredible sense of humor? Because this story goes down, right? And it's connected to Snowden, about a week removed from a story about a Ryanair plane that had to land in Minsk. And one of the talking points about what Lukashenko did was the fact that there was a similar flight being taken many years ago by Morales, where they made that plane land in Austria, and the European Union closed all their airspace to search for Snowden. So once again, you have, you know, it seems like all of the hypocrisies, they always come back to haunt these EU guys sooner or later, and they haunt them in the most interesting ways and the most hilarious ways. I just find it interesting that once again, here you have Snowden, here you have more hypocrisy, whether it's Belarus and the plane that was forced to land in Belarus, or whether you have Evo Morales and looking for Snowden on that plane. And here you have Snowden, more revelations that, you know what, you guys are always talking about Russia and spying and spying. Russia did this, Russia did that. And at the end of the day, you guys are the ones that are spying on each other, including the Messiah himself, Mr. Barack Obama.
Absolutely, because again, I mean, let's say it straight again. He was the godfather of all of this. All of this is part of his legacy. But that's the nature of this whole operation. But you're absolutely right. I mean, God does sometimes laugh, and it could very well be that Ryanair thing is a case of that. Because let's be straightforward about it. It did wonderfully expose the absolute hypocrisy, mendacity, doublespeak of all of these people. I mean, we were shocked that Belarus may have forced a plane to land and taken somebody off it. Of course, by the way, that's increasingly been questioned, and the ICAO, was the International Civil Aviation Organization, is far from sure, and they've ordered a full investigation. So it could be that even that story isn't quite what we're being told. But anyway, that's that. We're all shocked about it. Of course, we did the same thing a couple of years ago. We mustn't talk about that. And of course, we have spent all these years talking about, Russian hacking, Russian surveillance, and we must, sanction the Russians relentlessly. But, here we go. It's turned out that we are all doing it to each other, and the US most of all. US clearly doesn't trust us. We don't trust them. We all, have these seething competitions, but we don't really. There are conflicts between ourselves and jealousies and passions. We don't talk about that either. So, I mean, yes, God can sometimes laugh, and this is a case, it seems to me, of that, because is this how allies really behave? Is this how they treat each other? Is this what true allies do? By the way, that is also a reflection of Barack Obama's time, because Barack Obama liked, we now have this myth that, in Obama's day, foreign policy was conducted in such a courteous and polite way, and the US worked so well together with its allies. In reality, Obama never made any secret of his contempt for the Europeans. He didn't treat them with anything remotely like respect. He got on reasonably well with Angela Merkel, but he didn't really like any of the others. He always thought that he was the cleverest man in the room, and we see what he really thought of them as a result of the kind of things that we're seeing now. So that's the reality of it. And we also see the other side of the picture, which is that the Europeans take this, they accept it all the time. They don't really push back against it. The amount of contempt they have for themselves, the sense of self-loathing they must feel, is extraordinary, that they put up with this kind of thing. But there we are.
Yeah, Obama's foreign policy was, in my opinion, was all about sleaze and secrecy and a lack of transparency. And I think when Trump met everybody in the European Union and met all his NATO partners, I think he realized it right away that these people are just the worst of the worst. That's why he was always beating them down. And that's why he was telling them, you know what? Just pay us the money that you guys owe us and just stay as far away from me as possible. Trump did not like these people because Trump understood that they were backstabbers and they were vipers, and he knew that. And that's why they didn't like him, because Trump saw right through them. So you're
dead right. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, with Trump, it was he made no secret about it. He saw them for what they actually are, and we've seen an example of this. I mean, if these people had any sense of self-respect, if this kind of revelation were to come out now, there wouldn't just be a row. They'd be calling in the American and Danish ambassadors. They would be making strong protests. They would be, doing things. I mean, they would be saying, intelligence cooperation ends as of now. We're not prepared to accept this. We will have all your spies at your embassies thrown out. That's what de Gaulle would have done. I mean, the people that tried this trick with him, the reaction would have been enormous. After all, bear in mind, he was prepared to take France out of NATO. I mean, that was what a real statesman and leader does. This bunch aren't capable of anything. And Trump saw them as they were. He had no respect for them. And why should he respect them when they clearly don't have any self-respect? And on what you said about, intelligence and the military, you're absolutely right. Obama ran down the military and built up the intelligence services. Donald Trump tried to do the opposite. He tried to build up the military, even as he was trying to sort of control or cut down the influence of the intelligence services. He wasn't ever fully successful, as we know, but that was ultimately part of the reason for Russiagate. And we see with the new administration that it's gone back to what it was under Obama. Again, the intelligence services are in the ascendant, and the military, again, despite the higher budgets, is being run down.
Okay, so one of the revelations is that Biden obviously was in the know about all of this. And obviously Biden is going to be at the G7, so he's going to be meeting with his European counterparts. My take on this is that Biden is just too out of it, too frail, too forgetful to even deal with this type of issue, whether it's being asked of him by his European peers, Angela Merkel, Macron. He's not going to be able to address these issues, or whether it's asked by the media. So my hunch is that they'll just sweep this under the rug, because even if they did want to talk about it, Biden is in no position to handle these types of questions about all of this spying. That's just my opinion. This will probably be handled by other means, not by Biden, because mentally he's just probably not altogether to deal with this, even though one of the revelations is that he did know. And my final question to you is, there is a story here with Denmark as well. And I don't know, is there a legal issue here? Isn't there a problem that Denmark worked with a foreign government to spy on its own industries?
Yes,
this is a big problem.
Right. Let's just first of all deal with Biden coming to Europe. He's coming to the G7. It'll all be brought up there. A few pleasant words will be exchanged, and then they'll move on to other topics, safer topics, like how to be horrid to the Russians. That's what's going to happen, because they're not really going to pursue this. You're perfectly right. He was in it up to his eyeballs. Edward Snowden has said that, and Edward Snowden should know. He probably knows as well as anyone else. But Snowden says that Biden was heavily involved. After all, he was the vice president at the time, so of course he was involved. But the Europeans are not going to pursue this, because they're not going to pursue it anyway, irrespective of who the president is, because they don't have the self-respect to. You would not have a de Gaulle. You don't have a de Gaulle. A de Gaulle would refuse to attend a G7 summit in this situation. He would go back and fire off and say to the Americans, look, until you get you sort yourselves out and you bring this thing to an end and give us guarantees this isn't going to happen again, I'm not interested in meeting with you head to head, because I don't want to be spied on in this way. And I think this is disgraceful, and it's disrespect to me, and it's disrespect to that great country which I lead, which is France. And I'm not going to accept that, because I am the president of France, and I stand for its statehood and its sovereignty and its people. And that's my priority. None of these people are going to do that. They don't have much, I think, regard for Biden. I mean, they're perfectly well aware of all the things that are being said about him. But at the same time, they don't really have very much regard for themselves. So they'll all come along. We'll have another one of those photo sessions. There will be all the usual communiques published, which have already been written in advance by their officials. Those officials are people who will take the usual position that you can expect from the deep states of all of these countries, which they all share alike. And that's that's all that will happen. That's all that we're going to see there. So, of course not. They're going to shield Biden, as they always do, and they're going to shield themselves from the reality of this thing. And now, coming to that last point, this does have major legal implications in Denmark. Now, the important thing to understand is that the reason we know about Denmark's role, the reason Germany found out about Denmark's role, is because it became an issue within Denmark. Danish media started to write about this. People started to complain about this because they found out this story of this internal investigation into what was going on in the Danish intelligence services leaked out last year. And the story spread in Denmark, and it eventually spread beyond the point where it couldn't be contained anymore. And it leaked into Germany and France, though I would stress in Britain, it's barely been covered at all. The BBC has run a few stories about it, but most of the media has ignored it. So it is an internal Danish thing. And absolutely, there are very serious legal implications involved, because Danish intelligence, first of all, spying on Danish companies, is a gross violation of the rights of those companies and the individuals who work for them have rights to, under Danish law, rights to trade secrets, to protections, and in the case of individuals to, the privacy, personal privacy, and of course, going beyond that, the intelligence agency of Denmark, acting as a kind of sub-office for the intelligence agency of another country, for the United States in effect, that is a very serious thing too. And of course there are legal implications about that. Will anything happen about it in Denmark? I don't know. My experience of Denmark is that on the one hand, it's a very homogeneous society. It's a very sort of solid place. It's conformist in a kind of a way, in the sense that people tend not to want to criticize or challenge Denmark itself. And it's a very proud and patriotic country. At the same time, I also get the impression that Danes do take their rights very seriously, and they might want to pursue this, through the courts. And if they do, bear in mind there's that decision by the European Court of Human Rights about GCHQ, which acts as a precedent. So this whole thing could blow asunder and it could get quickly out of control. And then the European leaders, who would love to sweep this whole problem under the carpet, might find that they have even more questions to answer than they want to answer at the moment.
Was it Shakespeare that said something is rotten in the state of Denmark?
He certainly did. That's exactly what he did. And my goodness, I mean, what did that set in train? All kinds of massacres and wars and conflicts and all kinds of things. Hamlet, I think it's certainly the first act. I can't remember the exact scene, but there is something rotten in this state of Denmark, and there clearly is.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it on a Shakespeare quote. All right, guys, look for us on Odyssey, on BitChute, on the free speech video platform Super U, and join our locals communities. Guys, you will find all the links down below, and go to the Duran shop. 10% off all t-shirts when you use the code REALNEWS down below. You'll find all those links to everything down below. My channel, Alexander's channel, the Duran channel, all the video platforms, and the Duran shop. Everything is in the description box. Take care.